So hello everybody. So after great difficulty tonight, I don't know why, we were able to get on. So I'm really happy about that. We're gonna have a great show for you tonight. It's gonna be a really good conversation, and I think it's something that's really important about relationships. In order to, because we always want to restore relationships and restore community, right? So that depends a lot on ourselves, like how we see ourselves, how we develop, and how we develop with other people. There are so many, I always say, amazing people that are out here, and all of the amazing people are like by themselves. And even if you look at the advocates or the activists that are in the community advocating and just doing what they do every day, many of them are moving in silos, so in individual silos. So we want to talk about tonight what that looks like, right? Having a good healthy relationship, what respect means in respect to that, right? What boundaries are, right? And how we can keep them and still form unions with one another. And also, what is staying on code? Because we talk about that a lot. And it's a very, very intricate, and it's an element of a really good relationship, staying on code, right? And so we're going to just delve into all of those things. If you haven't already shared the show, share the show. If anybody has comments, we're going to respond to them in the comment section. Please be patient with us as I do that, because since I'm running the show and producing it, I'm like multitasking here. So in a few short moments, we will be ready to begin. So we'll be right back.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like this. Baby, you a heart stopper.
Woke up in my city, yeah, I feel like Big Papa. I feel like Big Papa.
Nah, nah, nah. You gotta go like this, and like this. Baby, you a heart stopper.
Woke up in my city.
Okay, so everybody, we're on and we're here with our favorite co-host. Hi, Ayo.
Hi.
Okay, so Ayo, we're missing a third leg tonight, right? We're missing our guy Ra.
Yes.
We have this. I don't know. Some people have the sniffles, and people are sick. I mean, they don't know if it's COVID. Making a reintroduction. So we're here, right? And we're gonna just set it off as is. So our show, our season finale tonight, right? Relationships, right? How do we create them? How do we maintain them? How do we sustain them? So we're going to go right to the gist, and we're talking about respect. What is respect? How is it important to relationships? In your opinion, of course.
In a previous show, I had made the comment that when it comes to relationships, respect is everything from the male perspective. If a male does not feel respected in a relationship, he's not going to function well in that intimate, committed relationship or loving relationship. Whereas with women or females, it is more important to feel loved and have a connection and communication. That's more important than respect. Even though both parties need respect, both parties need love, it is more important to a man to have respect, not only in a relationship, but like from the community and from his peers. So when we talk about relationships, we're talking about like interpersonal relationships. We're talking about relationships with people you work with, relationships with family members. We're talking about all manner of relationships. With men, it is important to feel respected in relationships.
Right. I definitely agree. Now I definitely know that there are a lot of women who don't respect men in relationships.
Yes.
So we're gonna just talk, and this is not relegated to any one community or any one group of people, but sometimes the tongue can be very cutting, we'll say, right?
Yes.
And so let's take it back a step. Before we engage in relationships, right, with significant others, I always say that it's important to have friendships first. So of the same sex, if you will.
Right.
So with those relationships, how does respect come into place? How does boundaries, how does that shape us in terms of shaping us for relationships with partners as we grow older, in your opinion, of course?
Well, your same-sex relationships help to prepare you for your what I want to say, significant other relationships in the future, because it helps you to learn how to communicate with people. It helps you to learn to form bonds with people, like
Right.
a lasting bond where you're connected to another person. So relationships with the same sex helps to prepare you for romantic relationships in the future. And you need to, like I've said several times before, we need to be on code. The problem that we're having in 2022 is a lot of people don't even know what that means. When people say we need to be on code, no, a lot of people don't even have a concept of what the rules are as far as relationships go, as far as, interacting with others just on a daily basis, like what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do, because we live in a society where there are so many changes constantly. And we also have a society where the population is very diverse. Whereas before, I want to say before the 1980s,
Right.
before we had this recent rush of immigration, we did have, like, there was an American way, there was an American standard that we were all on the same page with. I even talked about how in the past, when I was younger, I clearly remember people doing, they would publicly display affection, which that is like a no-no now. Like, you used to see people putting people used to go to the park and walk around. You would see couples holding hands, and they would put blankets on the grass, and they would kiss and hug. So that was a way to signal to younger people, this is how you interact with someone you care about. But we don't have that nowadays. In fact, we have the opposite. We have images of negativity. We have images of toxicity. We have people fighting. We have pornography. We have all manner of things that young people shouldn't even see. When I say young people, I'm talking about children that they shouldn't even have a concept of, but that's the only thing they get as far as what how adults are supposed to interact, when that's that's the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and so that's what the beginning and part of this show is about. For everyone who's just joined on, thank you for joining us in this conversation. Again, this is interactive. You guys put your comments in, and we'll be, making sure that we interact. If anybody wants to, share something that's really dynamic, hey, we can send you a link to the show also. I got to join for these topics. Yeah, Elegance, you're welcome too if you like. Even tonight, our gentleman co-host weren't able to join us because he got sick, unfortunately. So, let us know. We can send you the link. Okay, so we're going to send you the link shortly. Say right there. Oh, matter of fact, give us your email address. Give us your email address. In fact, I'm going to put my email address in. Let's see. I don't know where that went to. You know what? I think it just went to the YouTube.
No, it showed up.
It showed up? Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. So you send your just send me something and I'll send you the link there shortly. But just getting back to the show so I can keep everybody engaged. So you talked something about porn, you talked a little bit about fighting. I want to just talk about porn, and not in the sense of what it actually is, but what it represents. So I'm going to get from you first. What do you think porn represents in terms of relationships? And so I'm going to be very blunt. I hear a lot of women saying, "Oh, I don't even need a man no more. I have the roles now."
Right. And unfortunately, our society has been gearing us up for the place that we're in now, because it's all about programming, and brainwashing.
Right, because we need each other.
Right. We're part of the X generation. So we were children in the 70s and 80s. And I remember clearly, and you probably do too, they were trying to push the whole alternative lifestyle, like homosexuality. They were also pushing concepts of like divorce, single parent households. And our generation basically raised ourselves for the most part, not individually. Of course, we can find people who said we had the Cosby type family. I'm saying for the most part, regardless of your race and ethnicity, the X generation, we raised ourselves. We were like the latchkey kids. So we, because our parents were working, because that was a part of the society setup, we had to learn a lot of things on the fly. So we didn't have the opportunity to have, see functional relationships and participate in them at a young age.
Right.
So
right.
that's part of what happened. Then I want to say the powers that should not be, they programmed us through the music. We've talked about this before. When we in the 80s, they had so many songs talking about infidelity. Like that was the thing. And that was geared towards us so that we wouldn't put any value or weight into committed relationships. So
and I never realized that. And
yeah.
I bet a lot of people never realize that. And you always talk about that. And, especially because I'm a music person.
Right,
so I'm
right.
always singing. And you're like, Sheila, did you hear the words to that? And it's like, wow. So again, that's that conditioning. That's that programming that we were unaware of.
Right.
As we become older. And just FYI, Elegance, you could click. I put the link right in the chat, so you could just come right on. Hopefully you could just come right on. I didn't even email it because when I went to the email, you weren't there. So just join us, come right on. Yeah, of course, she need a man. Yeah, Aisha. Okay, so let's go to some of these comments. Aisha says, of course, she need a man until she find the right one for her. The rule's gonna take care of her. I'm just saying. Absolutely, Aisha. So we gotta get to where do we want to be in our relationships. And I read something the other day, and I'd love for the audience to chime in with this, and you too as well, Ayo. Okay. A gentleman posted something on IG, and he said that women really don't want men. They want puppets. They want something that they can control, somebody that keeps their mouth closed and just do and be like a slave to them. And the moment that they say, hey, you can't do this or that, or they speak to you in a way that they need you to do something, is combated with, I don't have to listen to you. You're not the boss. We're equal. What do you think about comments like that? Because a lot of men chimed in to say that they agreed. And I wasn't sure that I didn't agree, because I'm being very transparent. I don't know how I feel about a guy that's telling me what to do. And shouldn't he be able to?
Well, part of it is another thing that's gone on with our generation. I can speak to or attest to is we have people speaking on our behalf. We've had my entire life. We've had men tell women what it means to be a woman. We had men tell us what we think. We've had men tell us what we feel. And they're in no position to do that because they're not women. It's to the point now where we have men who are transvestites acting as if they are more woman than a woman or a cis woman. So I don't really pay attention to when men tell women what they think. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like you're speaking from your perspective. It would be different if a woman said that. And even though they do have women, I've seen a lot of women sit up there and they're only, what I want to say, they're only repeating or regurgitating the talking points of a sexist man a lot of times.
Yeah. What is a sexist man? Can you explain that to us?
We're going to have to get the dictionary out tonight, honey.
Yes, because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be totally honest with you again. Like I said, I like to always be, as transparent as possible.
Right.
And I remember for so long, I didn't even know that feminism existed. I
Right.
did not know. I remember when I had my first daughter, and
Mm-hmm.
one of my girlfriends came over to my house, for the baby shower.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall her distinctly saying, and I'll never forget it. She said, when she was leaving, she said, "Wow, Sheila, it seems like you have a bit of a chauvinist there." And she was talking about my husband, and I was like, "A
Mm-hmm.
chauvinist?"
I have no comment on that.
I literally had no idea as to what it was,
Right.
what made her say that, what
But do
made
you
her, but
now? That's the question.
but come to find out that she was a lot more, and I'm trying to multitask over here. She was a lot more, should I say, in tune to what that was. I
Right.
never met that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Up until then, I never felt like oppressive as a woman. I never met where a man treated me like I was less than.
Right.
So it was like it was a foreign concept to me.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I grew and developed into womanhood and into my marriage, I learned exactly what that was. And ironically, it was other men, telling my husband what he need to have been doing, and
Right. And
older men.
that's my point. Like I said before with the comment that you made, it's like if a woman had said that, that would be different. If a woman's speaking from a woman's point of view, but a man telling women what they think, that's ridiculous. And sexism is just like a superior mindset of a certain sex, basically.
Right. And so how do women, and Elegance is about to come on with us soon.
Okay.
How do women, and I definitely want to get a male perspective on this, right? Especially in our community, so many women don't have dad figures in the household.
Right.
Right. And we often talk about how that impacts a man, but how does that impact the woman when all the governance is coming from other women? So
Right.
now you're in a situation where this man should be able to, or should he, right? That's still debatable.
Right.
And reinstate some type of governance, right? He should be the head of the household. But
Right.
what does that look
What
like?
does that mean? Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the issue.
And that's why we needed Ra on here tonight.
Right. But that's the issue, because what's happening, and this goes back to what I was saying about our society. Our society is playing mind games on us. Like we're being programmed to think a certain way. Because even though we're in a Christian society, the book of the Christians is the Bible, right?
Right.
Even with that being said, most people don't even know that there are laws, statutes, and commandments in the Bible. Most Christians don't know that. They
Yeah,
don't
you
know
know
that there
what?
are
And
rules you're supposed to follow.
so they say that a lot. They'll say things such as, well, nobody has a book. No one knows how this is supposed to go. There are books,
A book,
right?
and there
But
are
before,
rules, and like I said, this is a Christian society. We're supposed to be governed, and even if this was a Muslim society, they're
right,
still governed by the same rules, the same laws, the same statutes and commandments. If this was a quote unquote Jewish society, it's the same thing. But
right,
what's happening is in our society, they are distracting us with nonsense, with things that will cause us to be dysfunctional, and they're making that the standard and the norm, so that people
right.
aren't even looking into, okay, what should I be doing? What does being on code actually look like? What does that mean? So instead of delving into those issues or those topics, we're focused on, whatever nonsense they're promoting at the time.
Right. And so that's the thing, right, about conditioning. We don't really know that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I said we need a male perspective on there. I had a guy tell me recently, and I told you, who it was, but they said to me after they had a conversation with me, he said, wow, and he's not from this country, right? And
Okay.
he said, Sheila, you're not gonna be able to get married to a black guy. You're gonna have to marry, I hate to tell you, out of your race. And I'm like,
that's some BS. That's total BS.
like, did you just call black men dumb? Did you just basically say that?
No, that's the propaganda. The programming that we're supposed to be buying into is to separate from our own people. Period.
And that's ridiculous. And that's why these conversations are important.
And that's why everybody you see speaking for the Black community or to the Black community has already done that.
What do you mean?
Think of the past month or so. Who has been talking? Name the people who've been talking regarding the Black community.
You mean celebrities?
Yes.
Okay.
Speaking for the Black community.
There's always somebody speaking for the Black community that's not Black.
No, I'm saying the Black people speaking for the Black community. Who's been controversial the past month?
Not Ye.
Yes, Ye, Kyrie Irving, Candace Owens, all these people, they have represented they are the representation of what society wants us to be. Society wants us to turn our backs on our own people and to align ourselves with our enemies and oppressors, and then speak down to our own people.
So that's definitely on the table. And I want to take this opportunity to say to all of the listening audience that on this Saturday at Bradley Court, Mutai El-Amin will be hosting at, I believe, 4 p.m. A panel discussion related to these issues, right? To culture and what is, in fact, Black culture, and to just, you know, mention a couple of names you just mentioned. Candace Owens specifically quoted recently saying that that's something she's something she doesn't want to have any parts of, right? And it's something Busta Rhymes also went on record to say, Black Americans have no culture.
No, the U.S. has no culture. That's the crazy thing.
The U.S. has no culture. I'm like,
the U.S. has no culture. It's like, what? We are the culture of the world. What? That's crazy.
So Lafi says the music definitely influences, and social media now plays a big part in it as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do we do when the bulk or the majority of the think tank are all thinking alike? Because it's really the blind leading the blind, but they don't know it because they've been conditioned.
Right.
Let me take it.
Okay.
Oh,
you have more to say? Okay.
Let me take it a little bit further. Even in school, there was conditioning going on. If you remember, I don't know what your per se school experience was, but I know men were always made to look dumb. Boys were made to look dumb. Like they usually got the less grades in class. They usually were absent a lot more. Somebody was caught in the hall for fighting or doing something they had no business doing, right? But who dictated what was right and wrong to do? That's a whole nother issue.
Right.
But you kind of always thought, wow, the guys are always in trouble. They must be dumb. Like that's what I would think. And I remember thinking that boys were dumb for quite a long time.
Right.
You know, and I'm just being honest. I was like, God, why do they get in trouble? Why aren't they doing what they were supposed to do? But maybe they were doing what they were supposed to do. Maybe us sitting like this wasn't the right thing to do.
Well, you know what? You just brought up a good point. And being that you're a teacher, you can attest to this. There are several different ways to learn. There are several different learning styles. So there's the way of learning in a group. There's a way of learning where you're like in lines. There's ways of learning where you learn through listening. Some people learn through play, like younger children, they learn through play, or the listening is like through music, you know what I mean? Or some people learn through reading. So there are different styles of learning. And the way that the classrooms were set up is not conducive to the way that
to anything
the males specifically learn.
To the male, that's right.
The
that's
females learn better in groups. Like if we had a group of people, we can discuss things. Men, their minds work differently, which does not mean better or worse. And that's another thing we do. We take something that's different and we make it better or worse than, you know what I mean?
I feel you 100%. And back to when we're talking about those relationships, like it's not like one is better or one is worse, but I notice with men, sometimes men can talk and say things and it just comes off as they are talking and saying things. Whereas some women feel like, well, I'm going to be loud. I'm going to be abrasive. I'm going to be boisterous and I'm going to make my point because I'm loud. And then it's like, so what the guy's saying doesn't really have value and relevance. And this is not for everybody's, this is not for all the time, but we are talking about some issues that people, the listening audience may be experiencing. How can they, navigate those situations? How can they get to a point? And some men may say it's women being emotional. Some women may say, well, and I'm just talking about this point for right now,
Right.
being passionate about what it is that they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But is that a form of manipulation? Is that a form of trying to get your way? You know, and are those things good for building relationships?
I think a lot of times it's done just to get your point across. And it also has to do with ignorance, because some people aren't aware that men have different communication styles from women. The communication is totally different. And a lot of times women are trying to just be heard from a man, and a man may not understand that, and he may think that she's trying to solve a problem. So it's not necessarily manipulation as far as that goes. I think it's mostly ignorance as to the fact that men and women have different communication styles, and that men and women need to learn how to communicate in a manner that's conducive for the person that they're talking to in a given situation. So sometimes a woman screaming could be because she's trying to get her point across, and it appears to her that the man's not even paying attention or listening to her.
Mm-hmm.
When that might not be the case. He might have his gears turning in his head, like, how do I solve this problem for her so that she can be at peace? You know what I mean?
And so again, absolutely. So before we, you know, get to, let's freeze frame that, right? She's yelling at the man and she's going off or whatever. Back to when you had those friendships, the female relationships.
Right.
When you just had friends, you know. Were you yelling at them? Were you screaming?
Well, no, because there's a different communication with female on female relationships, just like with male on male relationships. Like men do not sit around talking all the time, whereas women, we can sit around and talk all the time. Like men, they're doing something. They may say a few words, but they're bowling a ball or hitting a bat or throwing a ball or playing some video game. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're doing something where women can literally just sit there and talk. Right. And have conversations. So it's, like I said, it's a different communication style. And if two women are communicating one way, that doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to transfer to a woman communicating to a man.
Yeah,
it's not going to be the same.
True, because we've seen that. Exactly,
we've experienced that.
Yeah, but
right.
You know, I would think that, you know, in consideration that we can, how do we resolve conflict with each other? Right, we want to listen to each other, hear each other out, and those are some common practices that could take place when you get in a relationship with your partner, because you should be practiced, right, and fluent in. Okay, well, let me hear what you're saying. And a lot of times I think in the relationships, they don't work because no one is hearing each other. Sometimes people are waiting for their turn to talk, or maybe some people are givers, right? Some people are takers,
right?
And that results in failed communication. Some people just think that you should know what I like. They're unaware, right, that it's a gazillion people in the world, right, with a gazillion different needs and wants and desires.
Right.
And they feel like, you know, well, if you was my friend, I remember, case in point, I had a girlfriend who called me the year I got married. There was a lot going on. And she said, you know, she didn't talk to me for 6 months and I didn't know why. And I was like, well, what happened? She told me because I missed her birthday, which happened in December. And this was like June. She said, I missed her birthday. And, you know, we were of age. And I said, wow, I've called you for every birthday since we were 5. So all the other times I called, that didn't matter?
No, no. And that's another thing. It goes back to communication styles. So what ends up appearing to happen a lot of times is it may seem to women that men are not communicating with them. Because that's important, the ability to communicate your thoughts. Because a lot of times in our society, men are taught to keep things within,
right?
To hold things within. So if they're holding something within and they're not communicating with you, that can cause a barrier.
Okay, when we get Elegance, he's saying in the private chat that he's charging his phone. We're going to see if he's holding things within. Oh, because I know he has a lot of input on this particular topic. So let's go to a few of these questions.
Okay.
Yusuf says, exactly. If you watch TV, you see an African woman with a European man or with another woman, and vice versa. You see an African male with a European woman. or another man. It's on commercials, billboards,
Everywhere.
etc.
Yes, that
Absolutely.
I've been seeing. I think everybody is noticing that. I was listening to a conservative white man who's in his 50s, and he has a podcast, and I was listening to his show, and he made the comment. He was like, I don't know what's going on, but he said every time I look around, like it can be television, it can be billboards, it can be social media, it can be videos, it can be whatever. Every time I look around, he said it's always mixed race relationships, and he said it's always white and black. It's never black and Hispanic or black and Asian or white. He said it's always white and black. And this goes back to what I've been saying. I've been screaming to the top of my lungs. I kid you not, for 30 years now. They are trying to genocide us through mixed relationships. That's why all the celebrities you see participate in Jungle Fever.
Now that is huge.
And that's us participating in our own self-destruction.
So you think that's a genocide?
Yes, that's definitely a genocide. And going back to what I was saying before about a code of conduct, and I was talking about, like, we're in a Christian society and there's the Bible. The Bible explicitly speaks against that. And you will never hear anybody talk about that. You never hear anybody talk about that.
Ayo, I want you to, we're going to promise, we're coming back to that.
Okay.
He says a lot of these celebs, and I know you got some commentary on this one, that claim to be pro-black, he is not playing, didn't even marry black men or women. Shaking my damn head. Wait, do you agree with that? As if I didn't know.
Look, that's what I've been saying, like I said, for 30 years. I remember literally 30 years ago, if not longer, I was in Texas, right? I lived in Texas for a good 10 years of my life. And I'll never forget, I was at Target, I was at the mall. I was at the mall because you saw it at Target too, but I was at the mall. And now, mind you, this is the 90s.
Right.
I saw a black man or black young man with a black young woman. And the black young woman had a shirt on that says "Love sees no color." You see what I'm saying? So this is engineering. This is programming. It's not a coincidence that I see a Jungle Fever couple, and the movie Jungle Fever had just come out, if I'm not mistaken, and you're wearing a shirt that says "Love sees no color."
And so, and when you talk about genocide, right, we don't want to take away from the fact that simultaneously with the genocide that's occurring,
right,
it's also occurring that people are trying to prolong and sustain their race.
Right.
So all of this plays a role. Now I'm going to put another comment.
But basically, this goes hand in hand, because the genocide is killing off our ethnic group.
That's right.
And you said, it's keeping the other group here. But we're participating in it because we think, because all the celebrities have, and they've been telling us, they've been running this game on us for, I want to say, a good 50, 60 years.
Yeah, this has been a while in the making.
They've been running this game on us for a long time. So they have so normalized it. It's in every show you see, every commercial.
Right. It's all about. It's not even just coming from the media. As we get immigrants, more and more immigrants, just populating our communities, they're bringing the propaganda that they received in their countries.
Right, and that's a big factor too, because when you research this and you go back, a lot of the Jungle Fever that you see was from the immigrants. That's for the most part, because they are using immigrants to stand in our place. So therefore, when you look at television, you're watching a show, those quote unquote black people aren't actually black. They're people of color from other countries a lot of times.
Right.
And the same thing with the politicians. A lot of those politicians aren't even black. Like if you look at the Congressional Black Caucus, most of those people are not even American.
Right. And I think that people en masse really don't understand how deep what you just said is. that they're looking at people like, oh, they're black. They're black.
No, they're
They're
not.
not.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. And when you hear, you know, because you don't really know a person until you hear what they're thinking.
Right, right.
And when you hear what they're thinking and you're thinking that they're black and you're like,
I think I think black people in Newark know. I think black people,
I
black
want to do that.
people,
You guys chime in on the thread. Do you guys know?
I think they see it all day, every day.
I'm gonna be honest. You really woke me up to that. You know, and I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna share a comment that I saw on here only because there are a lot of comments. I'm trying to get to all you guys. Somebody said that I don't see anything wrong with interracial relationships, right? So if a person is not looking at that, right, and making that a priority, of a person is not looking at what background people came from, because people say they really don't care, but let me tell you that it matters.
Oh yeah.
Because and I want to just say this to the audience, because I know I'm not saying anything new to you, Ayo, but you can elaborate on it as well.
Okay.
The reason why it's important is because, number one, like I said, it's watering down our race. And for number two, is pushing legislation that's anti what we need. We were just talking about some legislation in Louisiana, and I'm going to bring Elegance on while you talk about that a little bit.
Okay, yeah, I was just telling Sheila that last month in Louisiana and Alabama, the GOP is considering passing legislation for I guess for voting blocks to determine what it means to be black, right? Because like I said, they've been running game on us. And when I say they, I'm talking about the Democratic Party. They have been running game on us for a good 60, 70 years. So what's happening is, like I made the comment earlier, if you look at the Black Congressional Caucus, most of those people are not only not Black, they're not even American.
Right.
So what is going on is we have immigrants, we have mixed race people, we have biracial people standing in the place of Black people, and legislation that could help us is not helping us because it's going to groups who are not us, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, so Louisiana and Alabama is working on passing legislation that determines how somebody classifies themselves as Black. Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? So if in before the 2000 census, you only had one choice as to your race or ethnicity. But since 2000, you could choose, you know, whatever, you could classify yourself however you wanted to, and you could say you were Black. So now the Louisiana and Alabama GOP, the legislators are saying that they want it so that if you say that you're another ethnicity besides Black, then you can't be Black. So you can't be Black and Asian.
And who's doing this again?
The GOP.
Who's doing this again? What party?
GOP, the grand old party.
Okay, the Republican
in the
Party,
deep
the
South.
first
Okay.
party. Okay, and a lot of people don't know that, and it's time that, and we have to do a show on that too, because that's very important, because we have a lot of people who are just blindly loyal to a Democratic Party. And we were in this voting space yesterday, a group of us, and we really had to have this conversation.
Right.
And by the time I left, a lot of the older ladies was like, wow, Sheila, they was like, I appreciate you for sharing that with us. And we're not going to get into that tonight because it's about relationships. But again, all of these things are connected. How you are friends with people, right? You have common interests. So some of those common interests you share has to be about, at some point, politics and or religion, because those are two big things that get talked about, right? And so by the time you are ready to get married or go into a relationship, that's a huge part of your relationship, because it's something that directly impacts the child rearing, you know, suggesting that you guys are going to have kids. So, and plus that household is the household that's going to be holding accountability for the public officials. So if, and I always say, if you're not holding your man in your house accountable, how the heck you going to even understand how to hold a politician accountable? So that's why they get away with saying, when you do it, when others do it, it's like you're hating. So people understand. I hate that word, because I feel like they try to dumb our community down because we're so
Mhm.
dumb. We might not understand politics, but we understand hating. Oh, they hating on him. They be talking about me too. No, no. One man getting 6 figures of high tax. It's not the same. It's
No,
not
you
the
know what? You
same.
brought up some good points, and I want to get back to something you just said, and also what one of the commenters said, that they have no problem with interracial relationships, and that is
Right.
by design, because at I want to say before the 70s, the quote unquote Black community definitely did have a problem with interracial relationships. We most certainly did, because we were see, the thing is, they're gaslighting us right now. We were treated there. Number one, that's number one. Number two, the immigration did not impact us as much as it is today. So
Yeah.
there's so many elements going on. But I want to get back to what the commenter has said, as far as they don't have a problem with interracial relationships. And like I said, that is by design. This is not coming from you. This is what you've been programmed to believe, that there's nothing wrong with getting with another group of people. In fact, that's more loving, when that is the opposite of the truth. The truth is, when you get with your enemies and oppressors, that makes you a traitor. And there's nothing worse than a traitor.
Mm.
You are a race traitor.
And so to that point, Rod is making a comment. He says you
Okay.
can't talk pro-Black but invest in interracial marriage because that's pro-white. And to that, Fee is like, yes. Yes, with several S's to it. Also, Rod says, Rod is not feeling good in his throat, so thank you for joining in the commentary. Whites want to procreate with Black people and sustain themselves through biracial offspring that identify being white. Now, why I think that that's I know that that's exactly true, and I know it because they've said it.
Yes, and they're going to be the new oppressors, because white people are dying off. They're going to be our new oppressors.
Yeah, but so this is my opinion on this. And I know that many Black people feel very strong about this, but this is my opinion. How I feel, this is my opinion on this. I really don't care what race somebody chooses to love and get married to. But it's a couple of things, right? If a Black man says that, this is the woman I fell in, I know I get pushback for this, but it's my opinion. I'm still Black.
Okay. Yes.
So, I feel that if a Black man says, well, I'm in love with this white woman, like, it's like, oh, who cares? Okay, whatever. But what happens is, when you look at like 98% of celebrity Black men and men with money, right, and resources, putting all those resources into another community, right, then it becomes,
But
when
then okay. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So when you look in your community and say, okay, let's say it's 20 houses on your block and one guy is married to a white woman, it's like, who cares? But when the whole entire block is full of single moms and the only Black guys, it's like, now it's becoming.
But that's why it's an issue to be with the one guy.
Okay.
That's why it's an issue with the one guy, because that's exactly what happened.
And so this is, wait,
finish what
I'm
you're
gonna say
saying.
this and I'm gonna let you get the mic.
Okay.
This is the thing too, right? If you're with, just say for example, a Black man with a white woman or vice versa, some white people I've seen have been more tuned into our situation than some Black people. Some Black people are more, white culture orientated. How's that for political?
Well, you know what they can do? The white culture orientated Black people can come together. No, I'm serious, because at the end of the day, it is causing an imbalance, and that's a negative for us. It is a problem for us. The imbalance is causing chaos for us. I don't know what happened to Sheila. Okay. Are we still on? Hello, Sheila, we can't hear you. Okay. Yeah, I was like, are we still on? You were laughing so much.
That's why I hit the floor. That was funny. But go ahead. Now, this is good stuff. Continue, Ayo. And you know what, Ayo? When you finish this comment, I'm going to bring in our guest to get
no problem. That's great. So what I was saying basically is, that's why we can't say, oh, it's okay, I don't care, blah, 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 because number one, you're not supposed to do that. The dominant society knows that. That is why in this country, for the longest time, there was segregation. That was actually being on code. You
Right.
stay over there with your people, I'll stay over here with my people.
Mhm.
We'll take care of ourselves, you take care of yourself. That's actually on code. Integration is off code. Integration is off code. The American society, the way it is set up, is off code. We're not supposed to have all these different nations living in our nation.
Right.
That's not on code. So
Right.
the problem with saying, oh, that's okay, you get to love, I don't have a problem with anybody loving each other. I mean, everybody should interact with others in a loving manner. The problem that I have is when you dedicate your life to that person, when you marry that person, when you channel your resources and your wealth to that person who happens to be your enemy,
Right.
of an enemy group. That's problematic.
Right. So I want to bring in Elegance on this part. Rod is saying the problem is interracial relation. I think the problem with interracial relationships further your subjugation, if I'm reading this correctly, because you don't have equal standing with your white counterparts systematically. That's true. Politically, judicially, economically, they're not going to fight against their own interests because white people benefit off blacks being deprived of resources, wealth, and power.
Mm-hmm.
Strong statements there. With that statement, I'm gonna bring in Elegance. Elegance, thank you for joining us.
Hey, peace and blessings, everyone.
Hi.
Listen, we're in need for a male perspective on some of this stuff. So
yes.
What do you think about this comment? Mel, Rod, our usual co-host, he's not with us this evening, and we're talking about interracial relationships, where you may stand on it. You know, all opinions are valued. The problem, Rod saying the problem is interracial relation is. I'm going to read it how he has it. I think it should be a little different, but the problem in interracial relationships further your subjugation because you don't have equal standing with your white counterparts systematically, politically, judicially, economically. They're not going to fight against their own interests because white people benefit off blacks being deprived of resources, wealth, and power. Elegance, what do you think?
So pretty much, I like to take away I understand it is between multicultural things to that nature, but my thing is the way I operate is literally I do understand that does exist, but I kind of block it out. The reason why is because I'm very aware that, and I just hope others will also take awareness of this, is if you allow that to pretty much be the sole focus, then pretty much that's exactly what you're going to continue to attract. I mean, we can't fool around when it comes to energy, law, and things of that nature. It has nothing to do with religion. It's just universal law. It's dealing with just also understanding how the mind works. For instance, an example, if a person pretty much uses talks about if they use the word hood, or if they use the word urban, or if they use the word suburbs, those right there, it's automatically identified with some type of race or a culture, basically, and not necessarily understanding the actual actions that is actually taking place within that community or that pretty much geographical location. So what I like to explain is basically as far as the tactics and the strategies that the world pretty much uses is, for instance, with this country, when it comes to just black and white, if we just put it just in layman's terms, when it comes to black and white, you got to look at it as far as where it's kind of like guerrilla warfare in a sense. It's still embedded. And the way guerrilla warfare works is you pretty much look just like the other ones that's like all the locals. And that allows you to utilize the strategy of infiltration. Infiltration, I learned that even through martial arts, when people talk about ninjas, samurais, and things like that. Like a samurai from the Asian culture, you can identify a samurai easily. They wear a certain attire, they speak a certain type of way, they have a certain type of movement, and they have a certain type of moral code that they go by. And basically, those were the ones that were pretty much labeled as skilled fighters, in the government, such as Asia when it comes to war and combat. And ninjas, basically, or if people try to say NIGGA, if you utilize that term as well, basically, it's kind of like wordplay. But if you look at the fundamentals with it, how it connects, ninjas basically are ones where pretty much they pretty much start off as slaves. They pretty much started as workers, pretty much. And when it came to like their weaponry, they only utilized what they had at hand to their disposals, which is basically utilizing the gifts and the tool sets and the skill sets that they already possessed. And when I say the tool sets, most people look at samurais for like their katanas. That's a weapon. It's utilized with honor. But when you look at like a ninja or a shinobi, in other words, that's the correct term for it. A shinobi utilizes a blade. It's also considered like a katana, and there's a various variations of other names based on the style. And the reason why I'm bringing that to educate everyone on that background is
Right.
samurai fights with a code of honor. Ninjas basically they're pretty much they had oppressors basically. They pretty much was like the government was what ruled over them, and when they started to see certain things that were not fitting to their actual true nature, such as like their families, when it comes to dealing with families, when it comes to dealing with freedom, when it comes with dealing with liberation, and even with the laws and the guidelines that they had, they pretty much looked at us as like uneducated, basically, like when it comes to dealing with ninjas. And the way that they allowed these attacks and missions to take place was pretty much ninjas are just as skilled as samurais. Samurais are just as skilled as ninjas. The thing is, they use ninjas to do the dirty work, pretty much, because no one really recognized their face. That's their purpose of infiltration. And the samurais, pretty much everybody recognized them. Now, when you try to blend that when it comes to strategies and tactics, basically, if you have a skilled warrior, for instance, and they're both pretty much equivalent in skill sets and knowledge, understanding, education, and all of those things, basically, they like to put a label on it just to remain pretty much on top, talking about like how the way the government does. And what happens is this has just been going on for like years, basically. And when you break it down, basically, it's all about who you believe you really are, what you stand for, and you pretty much block out all of these different guidelines that they have, because the guidelines is based on dealing with finances, money, accounts, trades, values, all of those things. They all have value.
So Elegance, I hear what you're saying. So let me just interject there and just say, right, when you say, and I agree with you, that it depends on who you think you are. But a lot of us who we think we are is because of the propaganda. You understand what I'm saying? And because of our limited knowledge and understanding, which are two different things, right? So you have like perfect example. Yaisha is saying everything is not political. Raise your hand if you agree with that.
I agree. I agree.
I think everything. Let me think. Everything is political. Everything. We might not want it to be. We might not feel as fair that it is, but everything is political. Relationships are political. When you marry outside your race and you're a rich man in this country with a platform, it's political. You can
from
say,
that perspective, yes, that's correct. From that perspective,
even our perspective, let's take us in the community. Elegance, you're very popular. You do a lot of things. Me and Ayo, we do a lot of things. If me and Ayo pop up here married to a white man, that is political as heck.
You're going to get a lot. It'll be a lot of controversy.
It'll be a lot of controversy around it. Myself, I wouldn't care. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I get it. I get that it's political. But I said, if I chose to be with a white guy, and I don't see that happening. But I mean, if it happened, it happened. I dare somebody to try to rescind my black card.
So the reason why I'm basically saying that I don't believe everything is political. I believe everything is spiritual more so. Regardless of how we label it and title it, it really boils down to the spiritual aspect of things. Whether a person believes in religion, scripture, or anything, it tells us that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places.
But with that being said, and you're right,
high places is a political realm.
Yes, exactly.
Political realm. You gotta say it.
Exactly.
Jesus got killed for politics.
Okay,
helping people,
right?
Making miracles happen, feeding people.
Yes.
What do you think about
powers and principalities? That's governments. That's
yes, absolutely.
Break it down. Now
the
listen,
reason why
is saying, wait. I'm gonna come right back to you, Elegance. We got you. I want you to comment on this, Ayo. Rod is saying marriage is political. Any contractual agreement is political. You comment on that, and then I'll go right back to
okay. He's 100% correct. That's why in a previous show we were talking about marriage, and I was saying that you do not have to get a marriage license to be married. Because when you get a marriage license, you are enjoining yourself, your spouse, with the state. So it does become a political governmental union that they control. So if you don't want a political marriage, do not get a marriage license. It's just that simple.
So for me, and I respect that, I think it's a lot of guys who don't want to get married out here, and they would probably use that as an excuse. But I get where you're coming from, Io, with Enra. I get where y'all are coming from. I get it. And
yeah, but you can get a deed. You can still get a deed. You can still put it on paper that you're married. Just don't get a license.
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
That's literally joining partnership.
That's literally you joining to the state, but you can still have it recorded that you're married. You can still, you know, and it's upheld. But I'm saying don't get the license, because the license is what enjoins you to the state.
That's correct.
Well, I had a license for 20 years, and I don't know, the state gonna do what the state wants to do. I think, you know, like, so, like, what I always say about that is we have statutes and codes, right? We don't really have laws here. And even the laws that we supposed to have, at the end of the day, they'll do what they want to do. A guy just gave us testimony with the Riviera, Hotel Riviera, that the police came in with the person to help break the law to make him have to leave. And you just can't make a person go in their residence and tell them to leave and their rent is paid up to date.
Right.
But that's what happened with the police with him. The police didn't tell the landlord or the whoever this person was, you know, I don't want to delve into that, but whoever this person was, the police didn't say, hey, you know, you can't do that. That's against the law. I thought you were law enforcement. So again, you know, I get the difference between the license and the deed and all of that, but you know, I just think that because there are no laws here, and a lot of people don't realize that there's statutes and codes, that people can ultimately do what they want to do. And like Ra always says, Black has no standing in law. So, you know, do we even get, you know, protected, you know, in that way? And you guys, if you want to, Manira just made a comment. If you want to comment by that on this, the government and corporations robbed us of our sovereignty. Wow.
Right. And so that's why Black has no standing in law, because we're not actually Black people. The thing that does have standing in law is Indian and Negro. And that's why they keep changing our name, because that does have standing in law. So as long as we don't know who we are, we're going to willingly participate in what the government tells us to participate in, and we're going to continuously destroy ourselves. That's why we have to know, number one, that there is a code. We have to, number two, know who we are. Number three, we have to keep on code, and we have to function in a manner that is to our benefit. And that's why I'm always talking about nationality. Like, there are a lot of people who are standing in the place of Black people who aren't even American. And it's impossible to be Black and not be an American, because Black is a byword that, like Ra always says, that does not have standing in law, but it pertains to the indigenous copper-colored people of America. That's the Black people. You can't be from Africa and be Black. You can't be from Jamaica and be Black. You can't be from any of the South American countries and be Black. So that's why we have to know who we are. Yes, Black has no standing in law, but Black is a byword used for a particular group of people. So we have to identify who those people are. That's number one. Number two, we have to stay on code with that group of people.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Why is it that only the GOP is doing that? Why is it only the Republicans that are putting their foot down, at least in your opinion, to say that, no, you're not going to be Latino and Black. You're not going to be Indian. No, like, you're going to be one or the other. Why do you think it's the GOP doing that? Because they put the GOP in a negative light for doing that, but I don't think it is. But what's your take on that?
Well, this goes back to everything being political, and the Democratic Party has been working against the indigenous Black Americans' best interests from the rip, because at the beginning, we're the ones who started the Republican Party, truth be told. And we switched over, I want to say, we switched over because of Roosevelt and the New Deal.
Okay.
Then we switched over en masse thanks to Kennedy.
Right.
Because he was supposed to put through legislation, but he didn't get a chance to do that. And we've stuck with them since Kennedy's administration. But the Democratic Party never had our best interests at heart. They never did anything for us. In fact, all the legislation that was in our benefit came through the Republican Party. But they painted the Republican Party as being racist, and we bought into it.
Right.
It's all propaganda. In fact, it's to the point now where whatever you hear on the mainstream media, just believe the opposite, and you'll be right. It'll be true.
Yeah, I love that. Say it again.
I said we're at the point now that whatever you hear in the mainstream media, just believe the opposite, and that's the truth. I remember years ago, I read an article by someone who was Republican, and they were saying, you know, these liberal Democrats are always talking about having the best interests of Black people and always talking about urban communities and stuff like that. But they made a good point. They said, when you look around, you see more Republicans living amongst Black people than you see liberal Democrats. They don't live in our communities. They live in the suburbs always, or they live in the edge of town always. They're not a part of our communities. The only ones you see that are a part of our communities are the ones who are gentrifying our communities, and that's the people living alternative lifestyles, like the people who are participating in mixed race relationships or participating in homosexuality. You see the alternative people, they'll start ingratiating themselves into our communities. That's to start the gentrification process. But outside of that, they do not live in our communities.
Ross says everything is political in a capitalist society. Love is endorsed on Valentine's Day to generate capital. Absolutely. And so,
but is it really love?
And I'm gonna pass it to you, Elegance, to let you get some of this. People really don't understand. I hear so many people, and I'm gonna be honest, like, you know, just because we family, we're talking, it sounds ignorant because sometimes we gotta say that. Like, we have a hard time saying the tough stuff to people because we are in a hypersensitive, you know, environment. Everybody, you can't.
Right.
So I'm talking in general, but it really sounds really ignorant for especially any Black person to say, I'm not really interested in politics. I don't really get involved in politics. Is involved with you.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Go ahead, Elegance. You can, you know, speak to that a little bit if you like.
The reason for me saying basically back on with everything pretty much really being spiritual is because it really connects with the mind. Basically, it pretty much, so man, think of so is he. So he is. Basically, that's pretty much the concept. So basically, the key is not to play the game. Honestly speaking, as the sister, I forgot her name. I apologize. It's not appearing on the screen. It's my first time meeting you. Io. So as Io mentioned, basically, from a few different things she mentioned, the key is really just to pretty much put yourself in a position of like your own pretty much individuality. Your individuality, pretty much your own. Pretty much understanding that you should look into having some form of ownership of something outside of like the government, honestly speaking. It is challenging to have and obtain and create things outside of the government, but it is doable. It's a lot harder. It's the same thing dealing with like medical, with holistic doctors versus doctors that's just pretty much, oh, just give them a pill and they'll be all right, just to suppress the actual symptoms, but it doesn't actually eliminate the actual problem. So my whole thing is really basically understanding that as long as you understand pretty much who you are spiritually and then also physically, it allows your mind to literally switch the perception. And by you switching that perception, just by universal law, those things will attract itself to you, whether it be negative or positive, whether it be Democrat, whether it be Republican, whether it be just you being a sovereign being, things to that nature. And really, that's why I'm strong on pretty much speaking about learning who you are as a person and where you're at. So that way, even though they're promoting and publicizing all these different things, it tells you to be of this world, be in this world, but not of the world.
Right.
All of those things has a powerful meaning. So when you understand that universal law is going to take effect regardless, you just have to plant that seed. That seed is whatever you're putting in your mind, whatever you're allowing to water that garden in your mind. And then basically it'll determine the outcome, the harvest that you're going to end up reaping. So if you're kind of pretty much more leaned on the Democrats, you're going to end up inheriting all of those problems and best blessings and benefits that the Democrats get. Same thing for Republican. But if you operate outside of that, then that's where the true balance remains. It's pretty much take the meat, spit out the bones. Same thing when I was mentioning about with ninjas and samurai. They all pretty much are very skilled at what they do. They're very knowledge based at the same time. One is more so like, okay, hey, I'm working for the government. I'm working for corporate. The other one's like, hey, I'm working for the low class society. I'm working for the poor or the urban or the hood area. And it shows you basically where, if you really look at it, when you pretty much surround yourself or go to locations where there's like-minded people, that's why they say there's strength in numbers. And that's why I'm sticking more towards just operating outside of that. Because as long as we continue to operate and play within that game, there's going to be rules that we have to abide by. But when we take ourselves outside of that, whether it be on paper, whether it just be mindset and spirituality, that's another thing why they have the separation between church and state. It's a reason why they have that. So basically, all of these things is pretty much letting you pretty much, if you ever played a video game or you ever heard any people playing video games, you get to select a character, whether you want to be a villain or you want to be the hero or you just want to be a vigilante. They allow you to pretty much pick those things for a reason. They put these things in video games for a reason to help us exercise our mindsets. And that's why it's really important to understand all three aspects of those things. And it goes into understanding the power of three. Basically, whether you're looking at religion, whether you're looking at just business, for most businesses, if you're trying to get an LLC, it requires you to have at least 3 signatures, 3 people that's on a paper.
Let me pause you right there. Good stuff. Good stuff. I want to just touch on this comment because I don't want you to veer too far from the spirituality, because I definitely want Ayo to share some commentary on that. Yaisha says that there is nothing in the Bible about race. And that really concerned me that I saw that. So I want to know if anybody wants to speak on that a little bit.
I'll touch on that. Okay. She's absolutely correct. But this goes back to what I said in previous shows, where the definition of words is very important. The Bible does not speak of race, just like the Bible doesn't speak of computers. But instead of speaking of race, the Bible speaks of nations.
Yes, that's right.
And it says that you're not supposed, if you see, that's why it's important to know who you are. That's number one. Yes. So if we are the indigenous Black Americans, by default, we are Israelites.
Yes.
If we are Israelites, we are specifically told not to get with other nations.
Yes.
So what I'm talking about is what the Bible is talking about, what the law is saying, and the law transcends the Bible. Because the same law that's in the Torah is the same law that the Muslims follow, and it's the same law that the quote unquote Jews follow, or the Jewish people follow. So yes, it does not speak of race; it speaks of nations.
Yes,
that's right.
And if you want to take it there, Jamaica is a different nation than America.
Correct.
Spain is a different nation than America.
And I'm going to say this too. We can sit up at my house and talk about this all night. It might not say race, but it says Black a lot.
It does.
And so this is why it's very important that you have relationships that are sometimes outside of your comfort zone, because some people want to be the smartest person in their group. We see that with the leadership in this city. You know, you want to be the smartest person in your group. Like you want everybody to be, beneath you, but there's no growth there.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous.
And then what happens sometimes is you surround yourself with a bunch of stupid people.
Yeah.
Just to feel better.
Right.
And I'm not, like being facetious. I'm very serious. You cannot expect to have real substantial growth around people who don't know any more than you know. And don't get me wrong, those people are comforting sometimes, right? But everything is with balance with me.
Right.
So you might want to be around a group of people sometimes, but that can't be your only dial on your radio, metaphorically, right? So you want to be with people where you're the dumbest one, in the room.
Right.
And then you want to understand where you are in that room and keep your mouth closed.
And then you can grow and learn.
Yeah, because that's why people have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. So if
Right.
you're in the room and you trying to do all the time, and that's the problem too. People are competing with people they shouldn't be competing with. You got to know who you are.
Yeah.
Like I
Mhm.
said,
You're supposed to collaborate versus compete.
Right, right.
You don't want to compete. Like it's like on a basketball team, the point guard competing with the center. We need both y'all.
Yeah.
We need both of y'all to play your position. There's no
Right.
Y'all
That's
only-
important, knowing what your position is and playing your position.
right.
Yes.
And so
That's why.
So I'm gonna segue into that spiritual piece now, because people are always saying that well they don't know what to do, nobody knows, only God could judge. Nobody wrote a book. Yeah, somebody did write a book. It's a few books, right?
Yeah.
There are some laws, and I want to just say this, and I'm gonna go to Ayo, and I'm gonna come back to you. Elegance said something that was really important, that we got to be tuned in to our spirituality. And it's funny how messaging comes together because before this show, I just met with the women of Wage, and that was one thing we talked about, feeding our spirituality. And I get the messaging and the things that I talk about from a higher being. I don't just say what I'm going to talk about today. No, I let that come to me, right?
Yes.
Higher being, always. I don't need a teleprompter. That's what I do. So even in the morning,
organic.
yeah, I tune in to the energy and the spirit in a type of way. And it's funny when I get on and I know other people that's on the same page with me, we always got the exact same message.
Mm-hmm.
And many
that shows we're all connected.
Exactly.
We're all connected
on different platforms, people I don't even know per se, but I mean, like, wow, I just got finished saying that. So again, feeding that spirituality, right? And it doesn't get fed. And if it doesn't get fed, how do you maintain and sustain a good, healthy relationship when a part of you is starving or malnutrition? So you have to have that. You have to have that fed. It's really important. And so with that being said, I would hope that you would just talk to us a little bit about what are some laws that that can help us in this trajectory so that we can understand a little bit more about spirituality and the role that it plays,
Okay, getting back to what Elegance said, as far as universal law, from my perspective, I like to look at the law, statutes, and commandments of the Torah as universal law, because the truth be told, that's where the governments around the world get their information from. The leaders around the world, they're all on the same page when it comes to that.
That's right.
The problem that we're having now is the powers that should not be, they know that, but they're keeping that information away from us. That's the issue.
My people suffer for lack of knowledge.
Right. And Sheila brought this up a few weeks ago. It was very deep and on point. She said, how dare a Jewish person sit up here and want to judge me for being ignorant of their culture and what they know when I didn't go to school with them. And the reason I bring that up is because Jewish people go to schools with other Jewish people. They segregate themselves and they teach their children, they teach their youth the law, statutes, and commandments. They teach their children, they teach their youth about cooperative economics. They teach each other about business, about law, about medicine, about what have you. So in that manner, I agree with Kanye that that's what we should be doing, because this was actually given to us. The law was given to us, but because of ignorance, because of the powers that should not be, we're not aware of that. But now that we're waking up to the truth, we need to be on code, and that being on code is following the law. And the law, there's in the Torah, there are 613 laws. If people would follow them, their lives would change overnight. And it goes back to, again, what Elegance was saying earlier about
he was saying it.
He was exactly. You should focus more on your spirituality. Be a spiritual being. Because once you're a spiritual being, then you're automatically on code.
Yep, all of that is removed.
You're automatically interacting with your brother and sister in the right manner. You know what I mean?
It bypasses.
Exactly. And another thing is, and he was 100. He hit the nail on the head. we have to focus on things that will improve our situation, things that
Right.
will make us better people.
Yes, the
There's a lot of
solution.
negativity going on in the world. Don't focus on that. Know
Right.
that it exists, but don't focus your energy on it. Like, yes,
Correct.
there's this, and that, but I'm going to focus on making myself a better person, making sure that I interact with people that are, you know, making themselves better. I'm going to make sure that my community is rising. I'm going to make sure that we're informed and making
Yes.
informed decisions. I'm going to make sure that we are creating wealth. I'm going to make sure that we are healthy. You know what I mean? Let's focus on that.
That's
Be
Not
right.
in the
on this
world, but not
other
of it.
stuff that they have us distracted with, because the
Yes.
distractions are coming every single day. And the people that they're using to distract us look like us a lot of times.
Yes. Guerrilla warfare.
Yes. Oh, and what you were talking about with guerrilla warfare, that, like, me and Sheila were just talking about this like a couple of weeks ago. I was talking about, I was making the connection between some of the comments that Kanye had some of the comments that Ye had made.
Correct. There you go.
Excuse me, with the movie.
Hey, it's a marketing thing. That's why.
Right, with the movie, The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Right. You were saying
With the interview that Steve Coakley did. So I was making the connection with the three, with the guerrilla warfare, with they're all from like, the movie took place in Chicago. Kanye's from Chicago, and Steve Coakley was from Chicago. I was making the connection with the three. And I think I actually sent out an email regarding that too. So what you were talking about with guerrilla warfare, what's important there is you're using the elements in your environment to fight back. So therefore you're not conspicuous. It's like you're blending in with the surroundings, and that's why guerrilla warfare is so successful, because they can't catch the person who did it, because they're not using anything that they can identify a single person with.
They're in the world, but not of it.
Exactly.
absolutely. And people may not know what that means, right? So how do you get spiritually fed? Like, I know my grandmother spiritually fed me, but suppose you didn't have a grandmother to do that, or suppose your parents just didn't do that, right? How do you know? And so this is when you have to become in tune to actually who you are. We are some very unique, special creatures. We can make magic happen, literally. We're not going to get into all of that because that's for a different show. But this is who we are.
You know what? I want to make a quick comment on what you just said. A way that you can feed that, or a way that you can get a good understanding, is what resonates with you.
Yes.
Like what I just said, that could be very offensive to some people, right? But if it wasn't offensive to you and it resonates to you, then look into it.
Yes.
Just look into it more. I'm going to
start digging.
I'm going to share a link later on where I uploaded the 613 laws.
I'm gonna definitely check that out.
Of those. Yaisha just real quick says prayer, fasting, and Bible study. Awesome
Yes.
stuff here. Thank you for that.
Yes, fasting is so important with keeping your health.
Right.
And it's
like
removing toxins and negativity out of your body. People don't know that. It's not just a weight loss scheme, you know. It's spiritual too. Fasting is spiritual.
And it says some things can only be handled through prayer and fasting. The scripture tells you that.
Exactly.
That's right. Katina says having a closer relationship with God and praying. You guys know, y'all know the secret.
That's what I'm saying. So if this resonates with you, then just look into it further. Because I know, like, some stuff that I say, it's not going to resonate with everyone. But the message isn't for everyone, right? It's not for everyone. I'm specifically talking to Indigenous Black Americans. I'm specifically talking to that group of people. So if what I say offends you and it doesn't resonate with you, then this message isn't for you.
And so the thing
it's not meant to insult anybody, though. I just want to make that clear.
So it's the thing is, so one thing that I loved about my husband, like, we would have these intellectual conversations forever and ever. Even with my son, like, my whole family are like minds, and that's why me and Ayo's relationship is so good. We don't always agree, but we're always respectful. We
Yes.
always maintain boundaries. And sometimes she'll say, I'm like, where are you getting that from?
And I'll be like,
I'll
there
say,
you go.
Because I know that she's not stupid. I'm not stupid. So when you have, it's okay, and I'm saying this to say it's okay to have friendships and partners that you have different perspectives, because people get together in real relationships with one another, like, in lifelong partnerships.
Yes.
And they want to cut out of the marriage or cut out of the relationship. Oh, they don't agree with me. They don't have to agree with you all the time, but respect is the minimum.
It's a reason why Christ had 12 disciples. That's 12 different personalities you're dealing with right there. 12 different professions, 12 different type of emotions, like all simultaneously. Like, so, and then remember, one of them was a trader. So, and the trader was dealing with what? Politicians, money, finances.
Exactly.
And Christ nipped that in the butt. They said, well, why should we be paying? Basically, if everything's supposed to be all spiritual. Christ said, look, whose image is graven on this coin, basically.
Hello.
Which Caesar, give to Caesar. Basically, in other words, Christ is still honoring basically what's the government's and what's supposed to be yours. That's spiritual. So it really all depends on like what you decide to feed. Like if you go to the grocery store, you're supposed to be trying to gain some more body mass. You're going to be mindful of the food that you're selecting for when you go home and prep. The same thing. All of these things, it literally reflects that. So you don't have to go to church. You don't have to really read the Bible or any of that stuff. It's literally right there. Those are just highlights of showing you how to identify it. Even speaking about how to identify things, even when it comes to the law, like even from the Torah or the Pentateuch or any of those things, when it talks about all of that, it's showing you how to identify what offends, what's offensive. It doesn't necessarily show you the solution, but indirectly it does show you the solution, because if this is the problem, then what's the opposite of that? Not to do that. How do you not do that?
But you know what? You brought up some good points, and I want to touch on what Sheila said and what you said at the same time. Sheila was talking about like sometimes people get in romantic relationships and they might argue and fuss and then want to shut it all down for an argument. But there are laws to marriages and relationships. A lot of times we don't know. The only reason to get a divorce is adultery. That's it. So everything else you can work out. The other thing about the Bible is they show you what it looks like when you break the law. They show you the consequences of breaking the law. So it's like you can follow the law, or you could do like, oh, look at this dude over here. He chose not to follow the law. Oh, look what happened to him. Do you want that to happen to you? It's like you're basically reaping what you sow. And Sheila and I talked about that too.
Yeah, I just want to say, you had to say something about that. Like I said, I love how we don't agree to not agree sometimes, but we still agree. I think that, so adultery basically, we know what adultery is, but if I'm looking at adultery, in my head,
there's spiritual adultery as well.
Right.
So.
Wait, and another thing,
on Elegance, because it's not just about the act of being physically with another person.
It tells you even a thought. It says you're already committed to sin in your heart when you even think that way.
Right.
The fact that one thing I don't deal with is disloyalty. And people it's about intent with me. Some people could do something bad to you, but was their intent bad or they just did some stupid stuff? Like with Kanye, I don't think his intent is bad. He just be putting his foot in his mouth sometimes.
Yeah.
That's how I look at people, and I take them accordingly, because we're all just people. We're not perfect. But if your intent is to be disloyal, you know what?
Then grace can't cover you with that.
As a seasoned woman, I hate to say this, and I'm going to talk about this literally because this could be a whole nother show. I can see areas of disloyalty being greater than cheating.
Right. But this goes back to another law.
It still ties in the same. In other words, if people look at and I don't mean to interrupt you, I apologize.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Really what it boils down to is like, if you love a person, then don't do things that's going to offend them. That's really what all these laws and commandments boils down to.
Because they know better.
Harmful, don't do it.
They know
better. But the other thing I wanted to touch on. Oh, okay. The other thing I wanted to touch on real quick is that you're supposed to be equally yoked when you're married. Yes. So then you don't have a lot of these problems. And part of the problem in our society today goes back to the whole concept of dating. There is no such thing as dating in the Bible. What people did was court. And basically you
Exactly.
court somebody with the
Yeah.
intention of marrying them. So
Right.
A date has an expiration.
right. So you know that when you court someone, you know you have a goal, you know you have a desired result, which is marriage. And the reason
Right.
you court is to make sure that you're equally yoked.
So
So a lot of the problems that we have is because we're marrying people, but we're not equally yoked with those
yeah.
people.
So
And we
so I'm
don't
gonna,
learn that until after the fact.
after
Yeah.
the fact. And you know
Right.
And
what?
that's
So
I
you
because
think
gotta,
you're absolutely right. You need to be equally yoked. And people talk about opposites attract. Sometime maybe, but how do they stay attracted, right? So it's
yeah.
that. But then it's also, and like I said, it's just things that I've learned, you know, from being married for 20 years, because that's a really long time.
that
But it
is.
didn't feel long because I really did have a good marriage. So I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna do that. But what I will say is that you can be equally yoked in the beginning, and if you don't open yourself up to learning new things, after 20 years, you're going to see some growth. Nobody should be the same after 20 years.
Right,
If you got
right.
married equally yoked and one person grew 20 years and you grew maybe one or rescinded in growth, then that's going to cause, you know, problems too. So I think it's important that you guys grow together.
Yes.
I think it's
And be
important
on
that
code
you
together too.
be on
Well,
code.
the scriptures clarifies that. It tells you basically in one simple term, it tells you basically confess your sins one to another. Sin means missing a mark. Missing a mark
Right.
could be within an argument. It could be
Right.
within a debate. It could be within a
Exactly.
worldview or a viewpoint. And that's why it says to confess one to another. Because when you confess, you're seeking of some form of like a solution. You're looking for a solution. So if you're confessing, you're communicating.
Right.
It's impossible to confess without communicating, because you have to, one has to show you the offense, the other one has to show like the being the defense. So
Right.
when the third component comes in, that's why it's always the power of three: God, Father, God, Son, God, the Holy Spirit. However,
Right.
a person wants to perceive that, it shows you that you it's even within science. You have a proton, neutron, and electron. Proton is a positive charge, neutron is a neutral charge, and then you have the electron, which is a negative charge. So
Right.
it shows all three, that creates that one unit, that one atom, and it shows you basically out of all of those things, scientifically speaking, it's what creates everything that we see in front of us, just by understanding those relationships with one another. Now, you do have ones where you have elements where, such as the periodic table elements like hydrogen, oxygen, and things from that nature. It shows you that it should have a balance, because you have certain elements where they can become unstable if they are not equally yoked. It's the same exact thing with us. When people want to look deeper into it, it shows you that that's why it's important for us to understand who we are as a person. And then when you understand who you are as a person, then it allows you to have like some form of blueprint or a guide or a checklist, so you can see, okay, well, if a person's diabetic, for instance, they know they can't have a bunch of sugar. They know they can't have the same foods that everybody else gets to enjoy. That's because their body, their housing, their vessel, or their home, basically certain things is not acceptable to be in that home, because it can actually create damage, and it can shorten lifespan. It can shorten a marriage. It can shorten our relationships. It can shorten the conversation just from all of those things. So it tells us to always be aware of these things, to be vigilant, basically. And a way to find out, like, to get closer to understand who you are. One thing I've grew up with understanding is basically the things that frustrate you most, the greatest frustration that frustrates you, is what you were put here on this earth to solve. So if it's something that really like irritates you, bothers you, it's up to you to literally dive deeper and do some studies. And those studies isn't just going to come from one place. This world is so vast. And that's why it takes different mindsets. That's why they say opposites attract, because everything, if without negative, then how would you identify a positive? Without
Right.
positivity,
Right.
how would you identify the negative? If you have just positive and just negative, then how would you know how to just be at peace? Because you're always constantly going like combating with one another. So it
Right.
shows that we have to have an understanding of that third component. And whether a person's speaking spiritually, the Holy Spirit is that neutral piece. The Holy Spirit will convict you like, hey, you're wrong and you're wrong. This is what y'all should do to make it work. That's
right.
how the Holy Spirit operates. That's that neutron that's within the atom,
That's
that unit. So we should identify those things that does frustrate us. So when we find out what frustrates us, and you find out what frustrates our brother and sister, that's why it even goes into when it comes to eating. It tells us basically, okay, yeah, you could be Christian or you could be another spiritual path, and eating pork, for instance, for some people, it's considered unclean. It's considered a contaminant. Some people don't do it just for health reasons. Some people do it because of the spiritual aspect of what they believe in. And
Right.
if they strongly believe that it's going to cause them to fail or fall, the scripture also has basically things for that too. It tells you, if you pretty much go to a person's household and they don't eat pork, don't go there cooking and bringing something of a pork substance or ingredients, because you can call that person to fall mentally and spiritually, and that blood will be on your hands. So
Right.
that's why it's important for us to understand who we are. If we know that this brother or this sister, that this is their health history, or this is their mindset, if they struggle with addictions, or if they're struggling with certain things that they see, that's why certain movies shouldn't be brought to certain homes. That's why certain families don't watch certain things on television. So it goes into all of those things. It's not just black and white all the time. But God is a God of like specific detail. Like you look at everything in existence, and the same thing we should take a part of. That's why it tells us he created us in his image and after his likeness. Image, physical being; likeness, characteristics such as the fruits of the spirit. Most people say the fruits with an S, like of the spirit, but it's the fruit. One fruit can contain many different vitamins, minerals, and nutrients just from that one substance. And whatever we eat, basically our body is what's going to filter out and see what needs to go to what parts of the body in order for it to operate at its maximum.
Okay,
So
I'm going to cut in right there. I'm going to cut in right there for a little minute.
Yes,
So what happens is, and I like this comment that our niece made. He says that we need balance, and I'm going to add some of these comments. It's absolutely true. Balance is absolutely necessary. Katina says, grow and glow together. Absolutely, absolutely. Katina also says, I love this comment. Yes, the Holy Spirit is our corrector and comforter at the same time. So and she also says, you're preaching and teaching. But see, so this is the thing. So we have people who are forming relationships, right, who may not be spiritually inclined. They may not believe in God. They could be atheists. They could believe in a lot of different things. So how do these people maintain a level of balance? Like, and is that what Io was referring to when she spoke of being equally yoked, right? And then if you are equally yoked, and I never forget this was a big deal to me. One time Kanye and Kim had, many of their little videos, and he was saying something to her, but her response was, don't come at me with all of that church stuff. We wasn't doing that when we first got together.
They sure weren't.
But my thing is this. When y'all got together, y'all was dating, y'all didn't have kids. Now you're married with multiple children. But she's still in a space where she's posing naked on magazines. And I feel
because she's keeping it, 100. She's being consistent with who she is.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't debate that. Absolutely. But my thing is, at what point do you grow? And if you're not willing to grow and move forward, should the person still be with you? Maybe they were with you because they
weren't equally yoked. They weren't equally yoked to begin with. So there is no growth there.
Well, the scriptures, even whether a person believes in the scriptures or not, you can look at it as a historical book or whatever you want to view it as.
It's all of it.
And a perfect example is the story of Hosea. Most people overlook that story. Hosea, pretty much, you got a king and you got a king who has a wife. His wife went out prostituting, sleeping with other people, other nations, and God told him, go out, get your wife. Logically, that makes no freaking sense at all. Yo, this chick out there sleeping with everybody else, and I'm a king. I have a high value status. I'm a leader. I have to worry about all these different things, and you're telling me to go after this woman that's going around doing X, Y, and Z. That was God's way of showing them basically the spiritual adultery aspect. Basically, that's another aspect of being unequally yoked as well, because in the beginning she may have not been doing that, but whatever may have transpired, she went out and did that. But then that's where God puts us to the test, where he's like, okay, I'm going to show you if you really, really are who you believe that you are or who you say you are. So I want you to take all of these characteristics, all of this likeness that I've created you to be in, and see if you're still going to be forgiving. See if you're still going to have that grace card. See if you're still going to have that mercy, because grace comes into play when people pretty much, they're ignorant for the things that they don't know. So that's where grace comes into play. In other words, compassion. Having compassion for a person who doesn't know, compassion for a person who may have not went to school, compassion for a person who may have not had experience in finances, opening up bank accounts, starting families, knowing what a man should do, what a woman should do. All of these things, it's literally embedded in that, and it shows us the proper balance and guideline stuff, how to come out with joy, because joy is really the ultimate. That's the ultimate harvest that we really should be striving for. And even when people say, oh, I'm not perfect, perfect, when you look at it in its original context and its term, perfect technically means maturing. So when people say I'm not perfect, it kind of raises flags. I'm like, wait, so you're not maturing? That's how I view them as. And it's correct in its correct term. You're supposed to be striving towards perfection, striving towards more maturity. And when you mature, same thing with your teeth. When you're a toddler and you're growing and your teeth fall out and you're teething and all those, that's growing pains. Something has to fall out in order for something more permanent to come in, but it's still coming from that same vessel. It's still coming from that same body. And it requires a different regimen to maintain those new primary, the permanent teeth. You can't just do the same thing over and over.
What you just said. I love all of what you just said. But one thing, and I remember we had this conversation before, and it hit just what he said when people say I'm not perfect, because I say that a lot.
We literally had this conversation a couple weeks ago.
Literally, wow. And I don't say it in the same context, and I get what he's saying.
Right,
I say that a lot, like, because my self-confidence sometimes rub people the wrong way. We don't all know that we're supposed to be self-confident. So they don't know the difference sometimes between being arrogant and self-confident, right?
Because we're fearfully and wonderfully made.
Yeah,
come on, that's confidence.
So like confident and arrogance and conceit, right, is something different, right?
Yes.
You having self-confidence in yourself. That's when you think you're better than other people, right? So self-confidence means you're not battling with anybody else. It's about how you feel about you.
Yeah, you're competing with yourself.
Yeah, it comes right, and it comes out, as good energy, with others. Now, when I hear other people saying, "Oh, well, I'm not perfect," and da da da, nah, you're trying to give yourself a pass, and we
exactly
this
people fear structure.
Lift it up to where you could lift yourself up too. Exactly. And I think that was this. Aisha just said that's the thing. We have this notion that we can change people. We can't change people. We can we can't change people. Only God can. Absolutely. And I think God gives people free will, that they can change themselves.
Exactly. They can change themselves.
They can change themselves if they want to, but it's too much work sometimes. It's too much work. And then you hear people say things like, well, that's just me. No.
Are you sure that's you? Or is that
I'm a work in progress?
I'm Aquarius. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of personality traits that come from the signs. I do believe in astrology, right? It is the study of science of the stars. So
it has facts in it, yes.
Yeah, there is some truth to that. Like when you were born and your personality, there is something to that.
It's based on season. It's based on season. Same thing.
Exactly.
I don't mean to cut you off. It's the same thing with when it comes to seasons and when it comes to eating, consuming like foods. There's a reason why you go to grocery stores and the proper grocery stores and you don't see certain fruits such as like dragon fruit or things like that. I'm just going to name that for instance. You don't want to have fruit that is out of season, because if it's out of season, it's going to do the body harm. It's going to do that household harm. It's going to do that business harm. It's going to do that culture or whatever type of whatever group or whatever you associate with. It's going to do it harm. So you may have the proper vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, such as a superfood or a superfruit or any of that. But if it's out of season, you can literally cause toxins to pretty much build up in the body. You can cause a person to get sick, even your own self. So you may be able to prep it the proper way. You may already be able to identify all the pros and cons of it. But if it's out of season, that message may be out of season to deliver it to the masses. And when it's delivered to the masses out of season, that's where we get all of this imbalance from, because the fruit isn't yet ripened. And because it's not ripened, that message or that heart for the receiver is not ripened, then they're not going to be able to identify that. Yeah, you could leave it sitting there like, hey, the proper way is, I just want to bring this to your attention, show you what it looks like, show you the benefits of it. And when it's in season, within that person's season, then you can partake in that. And that's pretty much even how the scriptures allow us to pretty much see that we're supposed to have structure with everything. Most people fear structure. Some people like, oh, I'm eating healthy, so I'm gonna eat dragon fruit or whatever other fruits all year round.
Wait, I want to just break in there only because of the essence of time to take the gist out of what you just said.
Yes.
Some people don't like structure, so I want to pull this back to our topic as we close out and land this plane on relationships, right? Does there has to be structure? Does there have to be structure in a home? And I think we all would agree that yes. right?
There must be structure.
There must be structure. There must be, right? There must be an element of some type of spirituality, right? Because people need to be able to rely not on drugs, not on alcohol, right? But they need to be able to rely on what their belief systems are. And if, as
Yes.
parents, if you're not instilling that because you're too lazy to read a Bible, or you're too lazy to find a Quran, or whatever form of foundation, right,
Yes.
structure, then you're doing a disservice to your children. And so when the children grow and have the problems that they will, that have the problems that Jesus had, right? How are they going to deal with that? Through alcohol, through drugs? People are dropping literally dead off fentanyl. They're putting fentanyl in the weed. They're putting it in
Yeah,
edibles.
yeah.
People are literally having heart attacks from this stuff. But people don't know what else to turn to. You turn to a friend, the friend betrays you, as again, Jesus experience, right? So people don't know what to do because they don't have a foundation of spirituality to come to. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's so important that we feed our spirituality, and it's never too late. You understand? Some of the people that, they enjoy the content of the show, we're appreciative for that. But you have the conversations with your children. And that's why I said, like, but my children can't sit and talk to anybody. They on a different level.
Yeah.
They're talking to me all their life. So I can't even put them in some of these spaces with people because
but that's excellent. They set the standard. They set the standard.
But we have to set the standard. So that's what is so important, right? That each one teaches one. And it's not like I need to ever teach somebody. And I always say this, to think like me, but you got to teach people to think. And somebody made that comment earlier about, I think, Ra, about critical thinking. I wish I could find that really fast. I probably won't, because it was like quite a few
lot of comments. Yeah.
Here it is. I found it. He said, ignorance regresses the free thinker.
Right.
So when you're willing to put in the work to know, like, does anyone ever ask you a question on social media and you say, like, why didn't they just Google that? Like, why didn't they?
Well, sometimes people are trying to troll. That's why they do it.
Yeah.
You got to use discernment with that part.
Yeah. Sometimes people are just lazy. They just want you to do all the work for them.
That's true too. Because we're in a time now where you can get whatever you have a question about, you can get the answer to.
And gratification.
There was a time in recent history where certain information was kept in a small group of people. It was in a top shelf of a dusty book in someone's private library. That was the only way you were going to access that information.
You had to do something to get it.
Age where you can get whatever question you have, you can get it within a relatively short period of time. Now, some things you might have to dig a little deeper, but even with that, you can still access it. I wanted to touch on a couple of things that Elegance had said earlier, and people were making comments about too, as far as balance, because for us as a group of people, we have to have balance and we have to have order. That we have balance and we have order. And that helps build up the structure that we're supposed to have in our relationships and in our community and as a nation as a whole. We have to have balance and order, and that can be gotten through, like I've said several times, through the Torah. I would highly suggest that everyone take a few moments and just read through it, because the answers, and this goes back to something else that Elegance had said regarding like foods, right? Not only are you supposed to eat foods in season, you're supposed to eat foods from the land that you are on.
Yes, because your body is
right, because we are people of the land. We are of the dirt, the soil, the mud. So this is our land. So we're supposed to be eating foods over here. A lot of times in our society, because America is what America is now, we're eating foods that's not made for us. And it's poisonous to us. It may benefit another group of people who came from that land. That might benefit them, but that doesn't benefit us. I wanted to touch on something else that Elegance said when he was saying how, you know, with diabetes, you can't be eating the sugary stuff around, you know, certain people. The reason we have problems with diabetes in our culture and in our group, especially, is because there is a program of genocide for us. And
Yes.
what the powers that should not be have done is they know that our food, one of our main foods is corn, right? Corn is indigenous to America. So that's one of our main food groups. That's one of our staples. Right. What they've done is taken high fructose corn syrup and put it in everything. So because they did that, it affects us more than it would anybody else.
It shuts down your immune system.
We're coming up with higher rates of diabetes and sickness, and we have to be on dialysis and all this other kind of stuff.
Right. So, and just to add to that, I mean, just pause right.
Not a problem.
There's places, other countries that they've went into with sugar.
Right. With the American diet.
Yeah, with excessive amounts of sugar until they got addicted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it caused a lot of problems with, you know, health. So go ahead, Ayo. Right. I just wanted to add that in.
So yeah, so I want to say that if you read the Torah, or when you read the Torah, you'll find that there are some things we are not meant to eat. It's not a thing of whether we like it or not, or whether it tastes good. We're not meant to eat it because it's not fit for human consumption. Yes. And some of those things are like pork, shellfish. The reason they're not meant for human consumption is because the way they're made, the way that the pig, she's like, I'm not listening. It tastes good to me. The way that I'll use shellfish first. The way that shellfish is made is it doesn't have scales and fins. Because some people sometimes say, oh, I'm not eating that because this is a bottom feeder. It's not that it's a bottom feeder, because tilapia is a bottom feeder, but it's a clean fish. And the difference is whether it has scales and fins. The scales and fins helps to take the toxins out of the body, basically, that the fish consumes. With shellfish, there's nothing to take the toxins out of the body. So you're eating toxins, you're eating parasites, you're eating bacteria that's harmful to your body when you eat their flesh. It's the same thing with the pig. The pig is the vacuum cleaner of the earth, whereas shellfish is like the filters of the sea. The pig is the vacuum cleaner of the earth. So you cannot cook the toxins out of a pig. You cannot cook the parasites.
It has nothing to escape.
So that's why you shouldn't eat it. It's more than just it's a law, but the reason it's a law is because some things were never meant for human consumption. And another thing that people don't know, shellfish is one of the biggest, if not the biggest allergy on Earth. That's the biggest allergy on the planet.
Yeah, because I'm allergic to seafood. Like when I see
a lot of people are. I eat it. And especially us, especially quote unquote Black people. That's a big allergy to us. But that's the kind of stuff that they tell us to eat.
Yeah.
Like everything that's quote unquote gourmet, the things they tell us to eat is the stuff that the Most High told us not to eat. And that's the stuff that is killing us.
So if we're not reading the Torah, we don't know.
Exactly.
So we're walking around
and that's why
state of ignorance.
Right.
Well, myself included, because I didn't know that. Right. And so there's so much that we don't know that we'll be learning until the day that we literally die. But how far are we stagnant and behind in our growth processes if we're not even around people that are engaging us in the conversation that will have us getting that metaphysical, physical to start digging for the information that we need? And if we don't get it, how the heck are we gonna give it to our kids? You know what we're giving to our kids? MTV shows, because the kids learn from you. So like people posting their kids singing drill music in the back of the car, in the car. Yo, you look retarded doing it. And I don't like to call names, but if you're doing this, like, see, this show allows me to be and
You.
without
It
being
allows you to
They're
be
foolish.
you.
They're very foolish. They're
yeah,
very foolish.
like why is your child don't even know their ABCs and they're singing drill music? Like this is like ridiculous. So this is something like that people got to stop doing. You got to stop being happy in the ignorance. You understand? Like what Ayo just said. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. But speaking of the earth, I just learned that even, and I don't know that this is true, but I'm in the process of studying because I drink a lot of alkaline water. That matter of fact, that's the only thing that I drink.
That's what's up.
But I just saw something that said
Can't have too much.
no,
Yeah, you can't have too much. You need balance. It goes back to balance.
Listen, what I've been studying, it says there's no such thing as alkaline water doing anything to your body in terms of a pH balance or anything. They said if you want something done with your pH balance, that you need to walk barefoot in the grass.
Oh,
Yeah.
grounding. That's
Your
grounding.
body
Grounding is what they called it.
Yeah, grounding.
Grounding is what they called it. So like I said, like, you know, and I know a lot, but he that knows anything knows that they know nothing at all.
Exactly.
So that's why knowledge
There's
is
a science of that, Sheila. It's called, I want everyone to Google it or YouTube it, even a video. It's called agnotology. Agnotology is the study of ignorance. It comes from
AD or AT?
agnotology. Basically quick little snapshot of what it pretty much boils down to. The main philosophy they follow is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Dunning-Kruger was a guy who basically ended up being arrested, got caught because he ended up robbing a bank because he thought that he was covered in invisible ink. The reason why he believed he was covered in invisible ink is because basically lemon juice is one of the ingredients inside of invisible ink. And he believed by covering himself with a bunch of lemon juice, basically, it allowed him to be invisible when he went out to do the dirty work that he's trying to do. And that shows that there's a study of ignorance that they actually end up creating that from, which is one of the main philosophies that they go off of with that. Correct me if it's not called a philosophy, but basically that's the concept that they go off of, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Believes that he knows one part, but then forgot about all the other ingredients that goes into invisible ink. Tried to rob a bank to get the best of whatever he wanted to, and end up basically having a downfall with that. So basically, agnotology is the study of that.
Wow, awesome. And never heard that word in my life. Thank you for that, Elegance. You've been amazing this evening. Thank you for joining us. Ayo, thank you for joining us. And I just want you guys to take like 60 seconds, not 60 minutes, to share. To just land the plane and just share, when it comes to relationships, what is one bit of advice that you would lend to our listening audience that they could pass on, whether to kids or whatever? It may be 2 bits, but like I said, 60 seconds, guys. 60 seconds. Okay. And we'll
Ladies
start
first.
with Elegance.
Ladies first.
Well, we're gonna start with you because we're the co-host, and then we're gonna
Yes, no problem. So for me, it's more so understanding who you are. Never be afraid to discover new things about yourself. Continue to seek out more of yourself, because the more you learn about yourself, the more you're able to relate with other people. The reason why is someone's always going to have something negative and something positive. If it's something negative and it is something that can actually be pretty much processed or pretty much made better to pretty much improve yourself, that's what you should do. The other part is always acknowledging, showing gratitude, acknowledging each other's strengths and weaknesses, and just accepting it for what it is. And that's why opposites attract is very important, because whatever one person's strength is, that's another person's weakness, and then vice versa. So when you have the balance, you can see basically, okay, I may be strong in this area or weak in this area, but if I allow you to take up on this area as the shield and you take up as the sword, and you keep swapping and switching, it allows you to pretty much play the offense and defensive to the point where you don't have to play or fight at all, period. If this is a fight, it's not a fight. It's just an observation. And that's really you want to boil down to. Stay in a mode of observation.
Awesome. I love that. So prolific, Elegance. Listen, we're going to reserve the right. Tonight is our closing out, our season finale. We're going to start back up during the new year, when the new year comes in mid-January, and we're going to reserve the right to bring you back on. I loved your
Yes,
thank you very much.
Yeah, wonderful.
And thank you, Sheila, for also allowing me to be a part of it. And thank you also, both of you, for being consistent, because consistency is key. If you weren't consistent, I wouldn't even be here, because I wouldn't be able to appear and allow the Most High to just work through me, and also to be fed the valuable information that you all fed to my spirit and soul and mind. So I just want to extend my gratitude.
Thank you, Elegance. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your evening. Wage love.
Thank you. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. So Ayo, you got 60 seconds.
Okay.
What would you like people to know in terms of relationships? What's some takeaways? 60 seconds.
Okay, I'd like to suggest to people that they get to know who they are as an individual, learn to love themselves first and foremost, do a little bit of self-discovery to see who you are, what you like, what you don't like, and also find out what your negative characteristics are or negative traits and work on improving yourself. That way you can come into a relationship as a whole, successful, healed person, and you can grow with someone else who's done the work to be in a relationship. Because a lot of times what happens is we come into relationships broken, hurt, fractured, and we don't even possess self-love. So how can we love someone else when we don't love ourselves? So first and foremost, I would suggest that people learn to love themselves, forgive themselves, and work on themselves, become better people, become the person that you would want your partner, spouse, or significant other to be. You work on being that person. If you want someone who's honest, if you want somebody who's faithful and trustworthy, you become that person yourself first. Then you can attract those things in a partner. Also, I would suggest that people take the time to learn more about their spirituality. Read the laws, because you'll be shocked at how many questions are answered or how many problems can be solved and how many challenges can be overcome just by knowing what the law is.
Absolutely.
It's like that's my suggestion for the most part.
They're very awesome suggestions. Thank you so much. You are the co-host with the mostest, okay?
Thank you.
Love you. Love the listening audience. Thank you for always joining us. Please share the show. And until next time, until next season, guys, continue to wage love. Peace.
Town, a 14-year-old boy with a record of drug arrests was shot and killed. It was the 10th fatal shooting or stabbing in Newark in 10 days.
Another deadly shooting investigation is underway tonight in Newark. This comes after a wave of violence erupted.
First, let me introduce y'all to the mayor, and I'm saying mayor because that's what it is. Some call me Sheila or Silver Bullet, just know I'm all about handling biz. First, we're gonna start by saving the kids, making the city a safe place to live. Unlike some people, that's all about self. My only mission right now is to give, and now it's feeling like Resident Evil with all of these fake political leaders. They need to go sit in the bleachers and just stay motivational speakers. Being the mayor is not for the weak. Got my feet on the ground and I'm out in these streets. You can show me with action, it's not what you speak. Say you for the city ain't beat. Lit the city on fire, we're walking through ashes. Parents are tired of giving you passes. Why are our children not learning in classes? Teach about businesses, real estate taxes. Fighting to keep low income housing. So much corruption, it's astounding. Team North, we can't allow that. And there ain't no way to get around that. Nothing but change when you vote for me. Time to get back where we supposed to be. Open the door, open the door.